I remember the first time he said Dad. It wasn't loud. It wasn't even clear, but it was mine. That word, whispered with a kind of clumsy wonder from a tiny mouth, rewrote every page of who I thought I was. It came while we were sitting on the floor of our apartment in Portland. He was playing with a red toy truck, the kind that makes noise even when you wish it didn't. The sunlight hit his hair just right, and I remember thinking I'd never seen anything more perfect. He looked up at me with those giant, curious eyes and just said it. Dad. I didn't cry then. I laughed, but I felt something pull inside me, like an anchor dropping into the ocean floor. From that moment, I was grounded. He was my son, my world. I tell you this because I need you to understand what it means when someone tries to erase you from your own child's life. It's not a clean cut. It's not a legal disagreement. It's an unraveling, a quiet kind of violence. And it doesn't start all at once. No, it starts in whispers, in delays, in little decisions that don't seem like anything at first. My name is Ethan, and my son's name was always Jacob Miles Rivers. Until one day, I saw a school document that told me otherwise. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My ex-wife Lauren and I were married for 5 years. We divorced 3 years ago, civilly at first. We agreed on joint custody. I would have Jacob every other weekend, Wednesdays after school, and longer stretches during holidays. At least, that's what the papers said. But if you've been through a divorce, you know that custody on paper and custody in practice are rarely the same thing. The truth is, Lauren never really let go. Not of me, but of the need to control the narrative. I wasn't the perfect husband. I know that. I worked long hours. I missed dinner sometimes. I shut down emotionally when things got hard. But I never once turned my back on our son, not once. Still, after the divorce, she began to chip away at the time I had with him. She'd say he wasn't feeling well, that they had a family event, that it was a bad week. I didn't want to be the kind of father who dragged his son into court battles and forced visitation, so I let some of it go first. But something shifted about a year after the divorce. The distance wasn't just physical anymore. It was emotionally. I'd pick Jacob up, and he'd be quieter, like he was unsure of something. Once, I asked him what he did last weekend, and he said, I can't say. Mommy said it's not important for you. I swallowed that like broken glass. I tried to talk to Lauren about it, calmly. I said things like, I just want to be present in his life. She responded with smiles that didn't reach her eyes, and said, of course you do. But nothing changed out until that day at the school. It was a routine parent-teacher meeting. They handed me a folder when I walked in, just like they did with every other parent. But when I opened Jacob's file, I froze. There, on the first page, was his full name, Jacob Miles Bennett, not Rivers. Bennett was Lauren's maiden name. I stared at it so long the words lost meaning. My mouth went dry. My heart was somewhere between rage and disbelief. I asked the teacher about it, and she said, oh, we were given updated documentation last semester. Documentation. I didn't make a scene. I smiled. I nodded. I sat through the rest of the meeting with the posture of a man pretending not to be drowning. And then I walked out, sat in my car, and couldn't move. She had changed his name without my consent, without my knowledge. It wasn't a mistake. It was a message. And that's when I knew. This wasn't just a custody issue. It wasn't about weekends and school pickups. This was about something far deeper, something more intentional. She wanted to erase me, but I wasn't going to let her. When we stood before the judge months later, I watched her speak with the same calm certainty she'd always used. But then the judge asked her a single question, just one. And in that moment, everything shifted. I sat in my car for over an hour that day, staring at the school file still clutched in my hands. My fingers were numb, not from the cold, but from something colder. Betrayal. There's no manual for this kind of heartbreak, no hotline for fathers trying to stay calm while quietly being erased. I didn't call anyone, I didn't text, I just stared out the windshield until the afternoon sun dipped low enough to blur my vision with its glare. Or maybe that was just my eyes watering. The next morning, I called a lawyer. I wasn't trying to start a war. I just wanted the truth. I wanted to know if what she did was even legal. I wanted to understand how his name could be changed, without my permission. The answer came with a stack of forms and a tight-lipped apology from the attorney who said this wasn't the first time he'd seen something like this. Apparently Lauren had filed a petition to legally change Jacob's last name months ago. She'd claimed I was an absentee father, that Jacob didn't identify with me anymore, and that having a different last name than his mother was causing him stress at school. She wrote all this with a straight face in an affidavit, and somehow, it had passed the first phase uncontested, because I was never properly notified. The lawyer told me the next hearing had already been scheduled. I would have to show up and contest it in court. That week, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Jacob's face at age 2, 3, 4 gripping my finger with his tiny hand, laughing in the back seat during road trips, falling asleep on my chest during movie nights. I remembered the way he used to trace the letters of his name when I helped him learn to write. He was so proud of those R's, and now she wanted to rip all of Meadow away. But part of me still wanted to believe it wasn't malicious. That maybe she thought she was doing the right thing. That maybe this was all a misunderstanding, a legal oversight, a breakdown in communication. I held on to that hope the way someone holds their breath underwater, desperate and foolish. I tried to talk to her. I sent her an email, carefully worded. No accusations, no anger. I said I'd seen the school file and that I was confused, hurt, and wanted to understand. She didn't reply. Then I sent a text. Can we talk about Jacob's name? She left it unread. That silence told me everything, so I stopped trying to fix things through kindness. I started gathering everything: messages, call logs, missed visitations, even the birthday card Jacob once gave me that had clearly been rewritten by someone else. His handwriting was there, but the words weren't his. No 6-year-old says, "Thanks for the support you've always tried to give me." That was her voice, through his pen. When the day of the court hearing came, I wore a plain navy suit. I didn't want to look like I was performing. I just wanted to show that I was steady, serious, and unwilling to disappear quietly. Lauren walked in 15 minutes late. In heels that clicked too confidently against the courthouse floor, she looked calm, smug. Even her lawyer greeted her, like they were friends, and they exchanged a laugh as they sat down. I kept my eyes on the judge. He was older, maybe mid-60s, the kind of man who had likely seen hundreds of cases like ours, but still carried some weight in his voice when he spoke. He looked tired but attentive. We both gave our statements. I said my piece. I didn't plead, I didn't dramatize. I just told the truth, that I had never missed child support, that I never declined time with my son, that I had been deliberately excluded from a decision that should have involved both of us, that this wasn't just about a name, it was about erasing identity, history, connection. Then it was her turn. She spoke cleanly, confidently. She said Jacob had expressed confusion about his last name, that he felt more secure using hers, that I wasn't as present as I claimed, that this was for his own emotional well-being. And then the judge leaned forward, folded his hands, and asked her a question I'll never forget. Did your son ever say he wanted this? Or was this your interpretation of what was best for him? For the first time since we'd entered the room, she blinked. Once, then again, she opened her mouth, closed it, looked at her lawyer. He didn't move, and in that silence, something cracked. Her lips parted again, but no sound came out at first. You could hear the air conditioning hum above us, and the quiet rustle of a clerk's pen behind the judge. Her eyes flicked toward me, just for a second, and I swear I saw it. The hesitation, the fracture. I believe I was doing what's best for him, she finally said. Softer now. The judge leaned back, his expression unreadable. That wasn't my question. Lauren's lawyer shifted in his seat, like he wanted to interrupt but couldn't find the right words fast enough. The judge continued. Has your son ever told you, in his own words, that he wanted to change his name? Not in response to suggestion. Not as a reflection of your perspective. On his own, did he ask for this? She lowered her eyes. Not directly, no. It landed like a quiet explosion. No outburst, no objections, just that single, still moment where everything changed. After that, the hearing continued, but something in her had already started to unravel. She spoke less. Her confidence shrank. She nodded more than she talked. For the first time in 3 years, I saw something I hadn't seen in her before. Doubt, but the truth. That moment in court wasn't the real beginning of the end. The signs had been there long before, and I was just too tired or too naive to see them. It started small, the way these things always do. The first time I noticed something was off. Jacob was 5. He was spending the weekend with me, and we were walking past a photo booth at the mall. He tugged on my hand and said, "Let's take a picture for the fridge." We laughed through every snap. Silly faces, one with him hugging my head, another with both of us pretending to be pirates. But when the photos printed, he looked at them for a moment and asked, "Do you think Mommy will be mad if I bring these home?" I tried not to show how much that hit me. I just knelt down and said, "No, buddy. Why would she be mad?" He shrugged. "She says it's weird when I talk about you too much." That sentence stayed with me for weeks. Another time he came over and asked if we could do something normal. I asked him what he meant, and he said, like go to the grocery store, or sit on the couch. "Mommy says you only try to be the fun dad." That one cut deep. I started noticing little rewrites in his language. He stopped calling my parents Grandma and Grandpa. He started calling them by their first names, like they were neighbors. He brought over drawings where his family only included his mom and her side. Once he even told me that his teacher had a dog named Rivers, and then laughed like it was a joke. I wanted to believe these were just growing pains, that kids go through phases, that maybe I was being paranoid, but looking back, I can see how carefully the pieces had been moving into place. I wasn't just being pushed aside. I was being replaced slowly, systematically. I tried to protect him from the tension. I never said a bad word about his mother in front of him, never pushed back when he parroted her words. I thought I was doing the noble thing, being the bigger person. But silence, I learned, can sometimes look a lot like absence. After that court hearing, something in me changed. I stopped trying to salvage the version of Lauren I once loved. That woman didn't exist anymore. This was someone else. Someone who didn't mind teaching a child how to forget his father, and still I didn't want revenge. I wanted the truth, so I started paying closer attention. I went back through our messages, through school records. I started noticing patterns, inconsistencies, subtle choices that added up to a strategy, and when I started pulling at those threads, I found something bigger than I expected. Lauren hadn't just tried to change his name, she'd also submitted documentation claiming I had refused involvement in Keita's medical, academic, even spiritual. She'd rewritten the history of our co-parenting in emails to school administrators, therapists, even family members. She'd built a paper trail of half-truths, enough to suggest I was little more than a disengaged visitor. But the most painful part, she had help. I felt it in my gut before I confirmed it. That cold intuition that tells you the betrayal runs deeper than you feared. It wasn't just Lauren, it was the people around her. People I had once shared meals with, laughed with, trusted. It started with a forwarded email, a friend from Jacob's old daycare who had always liked me more than she liked. Lauren sent me a message with no subject line, just 2 sentences. I thought you should see this. I'm sorry. Attached was a message Lauren had sent to the director of the daycare almost a year earlier. It detailed how I rarely showed up for pickups, how Jacob had started experiencing emotional stress because of my absence, and how she was taking the steps necessary to protect him from instability. It was a lie. I was never late for pickups. I rearranged meetings to make them on time. I showed up to school events even when I knew she would be there with her tight, icy smiles. I bent my life in half to be present, and now I realized she had been documenting a version of reality that made me look like a ghost. So I started digging. I requested records from the school, from the pediatrician's office, from the church where Jacob had recently started attending Sunday programs. I reviewed every message, every calendar entry, every note sent home. It all painted the same picture, a subtle but steady erasure. I'd been removed as an emergency contact. My name wasn't listed in the school's volunteer database, even though I'd signed up twice. The church had a family file with only Lauren's last name listed for Jacob, and when I asked the pediatrician's office to confirm who had been listed as Jacob's guardian for the past year, the nurse hesitated and said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Rivers. Our records only show a single custodial parent, single.custodial.parent. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything, but something inside me snapped into a cold kind of clarity. This wasn't accidental. This was deliberate. She was building a world where I didn't exist, and worse, she was making Jacob believe it was normal. I started writing everything down, every inconsistency, every date, every time Jacob hesitated before calling me dad. I created a timeline, a dossier, a file thick with the quiet war she'd been waging, and then something happened that nearly broke me. It was a Sunday morning. Jacob had left a notebook in his backpack, one of those school journals where kids write short entries about their weekend. I found it while cleaning up. I shouldn't have read it. I know that, but something told me I needed to. On the page, dated 2 weeks earlier, it said, "This weekend, I stayed with my mom. We made pancakes. I wanted to go to Dad's, but Mom said maybe next time. She says he needs space. I think I did something wrong." That last line shattered me. It wasn't just that she was cutting me out, she was making him think it was his fault. Children internalize silence. They fill the blanks with guilt. And Jacob had started believing he was the reason his father had become a background figure in his life. I sat on the floor of my living room with that notebook in my lap, and for the first time in years, I wept. Not out of anger, out of grief, for the time lost, for the innocence manipulated, for the little boy caught in the crossfire of something he couldn't understand. But I also knew one thing with absolute certainty now. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about protecting Jacob from the lie he was being raised inside of. I wasn't going to confront her directly. That would only make her dig in deeper. People like Lauren don't crumble under pressure. They calcify, harden. So I changed my approach. I became quiet, strategic. I requested a guardian, ad litem, impartial investigator, assigned by the court to assess custody arrangements. I handed over every record, every message, every drawing, every journal page. I didn't tell Lauren. I didn't even hint at it, but I knew one thing. The truth was coming, and she wouldn't be able to outrun it forever. The guardian ad litem's name was Rebecca, late 40s, no nonsense. Soft voice but sharp eyes. She had that air of someone who'd seen too much to be impressed by performance, too tired to be manipulated by charm. We met in her office, and I handed her the binder I'd prepared. It felt strange, placing my relationship with my son into a pile of printed screenshots and journal entries. Like proving love through paperwork, she read in silence, flipping page by page, pausing only to jot down notes. At one point, she looked up and asked a question I wasn't expecting. "Do you still love her?" I blinked. "That's not really the issue." "It is," she said, "because how we process pain has everything to do with how we protect a child from it." I didn't answer, mostly because I didn't know how to. Love doesn't just die, it erodes, and the erosion leaves behind sharp edges. The investigation took 6 weeks. 6 weeks of quiet observation. Rebecca met with Jacob alone. She showed up at Lauren's house unannounced. She visited his school, called the pediatrician, even spoke with some of the other parents at Jacob's soccer practice. Lauren must have sensed something. She called me once, late at night, voice low and careful. "Did you send someone after me?" I kept my voice flat. "I'm protecting my son. You're just trying to punish me." I didn't respond. I hung up that next time I saw her. It was in the waiting room outside the courthouse. Just days before the final hearing on the name change. She looked different. Not fragile. Lauren would never let herself appear that way. But thinner, tense, wearing her smile like a mask stretched too tight. Rebecca submitted her findings the day before the hearing. It was a thick envelope, sealed, handed to the judge directly. I never saw the full report. But I didn't need to, because during the hearing something happened that I hadn't planned for. Jacob was called to speak, just briefly. In chambers, not under oath. But the judge wanted to hear from him, and we both had to agree. Lauren hesitated. I said yes. The moment they called his name, her hand trembled slightly. She reached for her water bottle and missed the cap twice. Jacob walked in with a social worker. He looked small in the wide hallway, wearing his blue hoodie and nervous smile. He gave me a quick glance. I smiled back, not too wide, not too expectant. He was gone less than 20 minutes, but when he came back out, he didn't go to her. He came straight to me, stood by my leg and didn't say anything. Just rested his head against my side the way he used to when he was little. Lauren looked at him like he'd just spoken in another language. The judge took a long pause before speaking. He cleared his throat and leaned forward. In reviewing all the evidence, he said, and after speaking with the child, it's clear to me that this name change does not serve his emotional or psychological well-being. He turned to Lauren. Your efforts to provide a consistent environment are noted, but consistency that erases one parent in favor of the other is not in the best interest of any child. Her face didn't move. Not at first, but her eyes shifted quickly, nervously like someone looking for an escape route in a room without doors. The judge continued, now looking at me. Mr. Rivers, I'm ordering joint counseling for both parents, and I'm reinstating your access to all educational and medical records effective immediately. Any further attempts to alter documentation without proper legal channels will be considered a violation of custody terms. I nodded. My jaw was tight. My hands were cold. Lauren stayed seated. The room emptied out slowly, paper shuffling, shoes against the tile floor. But she didn't move. And then, quietly, her voice. I didn't mean to hurt him. I turned. She was still facing forward, not looking at me. But you did, I said. And for the first time her shoulders sank. Not dramatically, just a small collapse. The kind that happens when something inside finally breaks. I didn't wait for her to say anything else. I turned and walked away with Jacob's hand in mine. His fingers were smaller than I remembered. Funny how quickly you forget that when you're only allowed to hold them a few times a month. We stepped out into the afternoon air, and the sunlight felt different, warmer, brighter. Not because anything had really changed, but because something that had been sitting on my chest for years had finally shifted. Not gone, but lighter. In the weeks that followed, Lauren kept her distance. There were no more late-night texts, no passive-aggressive calendar edits, no refusals or delays. When it was my time with Jacob, she complied. Not because she wanted to, but because she had to. Because the truth, once uncovered, can't be buried again. But I also noticed something else. Jacob began to open up again. It wasn't immediate. It came in pieces. A drawing left on my fridge that showed us both at a park. A note he wrote and slipped into my jacket pocket. I'm happy I have both of you. One night as I tucked him in, he whispered, I knew you didn't go away. I sat on the edge of the bed, brushing his hair back gently. I was always here, I said. He nodded like he already knew, like he'd just needed someone to confirm it. And in that moment, I realized I hadn't just been fighting for a name. I had been fighting for memory, for truth, for connection, for the thread between a father and son that no lie, no silence, no court ruling could ever truly sever. Lauren and I never returned to what we were. There was no reconciliation, no miraculous healing. But we became functional, respectful. Even maybe it was because she finally saw the line she had crossed. Or maybe she realized that the boy we both loved was watching everything, absorbing it all. And children, more than anything, need peace. Years have passed since that courtroom. Jacob still carries my last name. He keeps both of our pictures on his desk now. Sometimes, when I look at him older now, taller, with my eyes and her smile, wonder how different things could have been. If we'd been better, braver, more honest with ourselves. But regret is just a shadow, and I've learned to walk toward the light. Jacob still calls me Dad. But now, when he says it, he doesn't sound unsure. He sounds proud. And for me, that's enough. That's everything. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for your time. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to the channel. It really helps. Click the video on the screen and I'll see you there.